All right, everybody, I am here with my first guest on the Rebranded podcast, Stephanie McDonald. How are you doing today?
I am amazing. Thank you so much for having me. Couldn't be happier to be here.
Okay, now Steph, you got to give me the run, like HR, recruiter, incredible, specialist, extraordinaire. Like, what would you say? How would you put it?
Yeah, I think recruiter is sort of the name that I like to call myself. There's lots of fancy names for recruiters these days, talent specialists, whatever. But I really think of myself as a person who matches talent with great companies and, along the way makes a lot of really great friends. So it seems like a really easy job on paper, but it's a lot harder than I just described it.
Okay, now I gotta say, when I knew you were coming in today, I'm like, I wonder what color the hair is gonna be. You never know.
It's true. It's true. My boss, I swear, every week we have weekly one-on-ones, and every week she's like, "Is it blonde? Is it pink? What?" And so, it's pretty much blonde right now with maybe a little bit of pink on the ends. It's hard to see.
Okay. So it's kind of like a platinum with a little pink, right?
Yeah.
I like it. I like that.
Yeah. For people who don't know me, I've had purple, pink, all kinds of bright colors. It's just kind of my thing. It's like the one thing that I spend stupid amounts of money on.
I think it was purple first time I saw you.
Probably. Yep. Yeah.
That stands out. Now, I got to ask, right? Because it is kind of a curious question. Being in HR, how does that work? The different hair colors. I know there's typically like controversy over what's professional, what's not. Yeah. How do you approach that?
So I honestly don't care what companies think. I mean, I've got like visible tattoos and, colored hair and the whole nine. And I remember when I first, I even put like a purple streak in when I had brown, like a brown, very conservative brown bob and the whole thing. And I put a streak of purple in there. My dad's like, "You're never going to work again." And then I started getting visible tattoos. He's like, "You're going to have to wear long sleeves all the time." When you're working for a technology company, the culture definitely tends to be more open to, people expressing themselves visually. And so that's why one of the reasons of many that I tend to gravitate toward technology companies that just don't care about that kind of stuff. They just want people that care about the work and the product and the people. And so I think if I were any different, I probably wouldn't be my authentic self or be able to do my job anywhere near as well as I do. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. All right, now let's get down to the nitty gritty. Who is Stephanie McDonald, right? Where are you from?
Yeah. So actually was born outside of Dallas. So I know not
a lot of people. Are you a Texan?
I am a Texan. Not really though. Like I was born there, but and lived there again later as an adult. My dad got transferred to New Hampshire when I was 3, and I'm one of 4 kids. And my first memory actually is on the plane moving to New Hampshire, and I remember walking around a lot on the plane. And I remember my mom talking about that plane ride once. I think it was on a big milestone birthday of mine. And I was like, "Why were we walking around so much?" I could remember that. And she's like, "Because I was potty training you on the plane." I mean, what a hero mom of, 3 older, slightly older kids. We were all kind of the Irish twins. And then me, who's still in diapers. My mom was like, "We're not bringing diapers to New Hampshire, so I'm going to do this on the plane." Like hero status.
Wow.
And then moved to New Hampshire and spent most of my life there. It's a lovely place. I think the thing that I sort of look back and wished was different was that there was very little diversity there. There was one Black family in my whole town. Mm-hmm. I remember their mom would not let them date outside their race. So they all had to take, there was one boy and 3 girls, and he had to take all of them to prom. So it just, to say that I was a bit sheltered is an understatement. And, that's something that I sort of look back and wish that I'd had more kind of influential people of color in my life at a younger age, but now I am, fully embracing having, people's voices in my networks that are different from me, because it just makes me so much more of a better person. So,
Yeah.
I moved back to Houston for about 2 years, got there just before Katrina and left right after Rita. I was like, you people are crazy, I'm out. And now I've landed in Charleston, South Carolina, where I've been for about 13 years, I think, and just love it. It's such a great place to live, and at the love of my life here. And so, yeah, I'm just over here recruiting with my 3 dogs and my dude, and we're happy. So not getting COVID, which is amazing.
That's the best, right? I just got my booster yesterday, so I'm like,
Nice.
yeah, I was down and out for a little while, but I'm back now. I'm
Nice.
good.
Nice. Good.
So you mentioned something that I made note of, right? You said 4 of you, right? It was 4 siblings. You're the baby.
I am.
Wow. Okay. So we talking about sisters, brothers. What's the mix here?
Yep. So I have 2 sisters and a brother. I'm probably closest with my oldest sister, but it was an interesting experience because, being the youngest, I tended to get in the least amount of trouble, just because I would watch my siblings like do all the stupid things.
And the rules loosen up for you. The rules are not as tight by the time you come up.
My oldest sister is like straight up angry about this. Like,
that's how it goes.
She couldn't believe when this is probably a little too personal, but I was probably like 17, 18 or something. And she went into the bathroom that all of us kids use to like open the medicine cabinet, and my birth control pills were sitting there, which I was actually on them for a medical reason. But still, she was like, what the hell? Like, if I had asked mom for, and I was like, girl, like, come on, times are changing. So yeah, it's amazing. That you're right. I did definitely get, my sisters and brother definitely paved the way for me to have a little bit more freedom and flexibility. I mean, I made plenty of my own stupid mistakes, but I also learned from them a lot.
Parents, I think parents get a little tired. By the time the youngest one comes around, they're like, whatever.
Oh, and yeah, there's so few baby pictures of me, it's criminal. Tons of all of my sisters and brother, and for me, it's like my mom's like, I was taking care of 4 kids. I didn't have time to pick up a camera. Come on. Yeah. I mean, there are a few, but
there's a trade-off, right? There's a trade-off. The first kids, they get more attention, more energy, but harder rules. The parents are making more mistakes, right? So they figure it out a little bit more by the time the younger one comes around,
Yep.
Although they're a little tired and a little older by then, but
Exactly. Yeah. It's the trade-off, I think, for me was actually really good because I was the last one to leave my mom. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so I always felt I really didn't get more years with her, obviously, like that's not how time works, but I always felt like I did because my sisters and brother would go off to school, and I still had about almost 2 years before I was ready to go to school. And I don't know, that time with her just really kind of cemented my bond with her. And I just have such fond memories of that time when it was just the 2 of us. I felt like an only child, like in the best way. I didn't have to compete with my sisters and brother for, a short period of time in my life, at least during the, 7 hours or so that they were gone. So that was nice.
Wow, that's beautiful. That is really good. Yeah. So you had you mentioned your mom was a stay-at-home mom. How do you think that affected you?
Oh my goodness. I think I think I learned a lot of her, the things that make her the person that she is, like empathy and warmth and humor, because she was there all the time, and just always sort of, kind of pushing me out the door a little bit. I was, and still am a shy, introverted human being. And so, I have to sort of push myself out of that comfort zone of standing in the back and not taking a seat at the table. And so the times that she would kind of push me out the door and be like, go make friends, go down to we lived right near a lake. And so, go down to the lake, go meet some kids, and that kind of stuff that I think helped me realize that, there's more than just sitting down and reading a book all summer when, you're on a lake.
There's life out there to experience, right?
Yeah, exactly. So.
No, I can actually relate to that. My mom used to push me outside too. She's like, get away from me, go enjoy life, play a sport, do something, go outside.
Exactly.
You know?
I remember when I went to high school, she was really worried because I was, the youngest, and, it was kind of like crossing into like this, now all my kids are either in high school or graduated kind of moment for her. And I came home from school on my first day, and I had been asked to be I don't know, like the manager of the girls field hockey team because my best friend was playing field hockey. I couldn't play because I had a knee injury, but I came home and I'm like, well, I guess I'm the team manager. And she's like, I was worried about you. And like, you come home and you've already got like this job. I was like, well, I just kind of got sucked into it. So a lot of my life has sort of been that way, where I wasn't necessarily expecting to be doing something and sort of fell into it. And, it gives you new experiences and new people to meet. So
Isn't it sometimes so crazy how your parents, they believe in you so much, but when you do accomplish something, they're like, I was worried. And you're like, well, wait a minute.
I don't need that radical honesty. Thanks. Like, I thought you knew I had this. But yeah, I mean, I started to go to college for photography, and very, very quickly realized that was not for me. I still love photography. I still take pictures all the time, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do from a career perspective. And so I remember when I came home, they were so worried that I was just going to float around, and admittedly, I kind of did that. I mean, my first jobs were in retail, and like, I just sort of wasn't pursuing anything specific that I was passionate about. And so, having them sort of always behind me, like believing in me, but also being like, you can do more, that was really helpful. So.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's really all you need, right? You know, bumps in the road. I can remember dropping out of college, and I came home to my mom's apartment, and I'm like, Mom, I dropped out, and I'm like so down on myself. And she's like, there's nothing to be down about. Like, you're still facing the right direction. You just paused. It's like, you'll get going. Yeah. And it was one of the best moments of my life, because at that right then I got to see I am still facing the right direction. I'm just pausing for a minute. I'll get back going, right? Yeah. So it didn't feel like a destination for me. It just felt like a rest stop. And it was, right?
I love your mom already. That's amazing.
So tell me this, right? With you being this, one of the reasons I wanted to interview you, you are one of the most empathy first people I've ever met, right? And I'm wondering, like, was it like that your whole life? Like, were you like, when you were in school, did you like go sit next to the kid who had nobody to sit next to them at lunch and stuff like that?
No, I was probably that kid, actually. No, that's not true. I made friends, but I made friends with other kids who were like me, with, kind of shy and nerdy and all of that. Unfortunately, I look back and wish I was that kid, because I think there's like a level of fearlessness that you have to like reach out to someone that doesn't feel included, and I didn't have that. I am now. I usually, when I go to a party, I'll usually like say hello to the people that I know, and then kind of look around and try to find someone that sort of seems like they're off by themselves, not engaging, and just go try to make them feel comfortable. And it's interesting. My empathy has been, in some jobs and situations, it's been seen as a detriment. And luckily, currently where I am now, it's like people think it's my superpower. And just depending on how you use empathy, it can either be a thing that is challenging to have a lot of, or it can be such a gift. And so it's really depending on how you use it and sort of how you frame it in your day-to-day life. An example of that is like, I want to help everybody get a job. As a recruiter, that's my mission in life, is if I could hire everyone, I probably would, with very few exceptions. But the challenge is that, if I talk to 10 candidates, probably half of one is going to get an offer. So it's really challenging to know that there's a high percentage of people that I'm going to have to say no to. And so as a highly empathetic person, it's the part that weighs on my heart the most about what I do every day. But the company that I'm working for today allows me to coach and educate people on what they didn't do well, which
Mm.
allows me to really bring that empathy to the table and say, listen, like, this is an area of growth for you. Go work on this and then come back to me in a year, and we'll see if you're ready at that point to try again. So yeah, I love that part of my job.
That is excellent. Now I have to ask this question, and it seems a little cliche, right? If you could step back in time and give that Stephanie McDonald one piece of advice, what would you say? Or would you say nothing and leave things the way they are?
Ooh. How far back are we talking?
Let's go back to like the middle school, high school area.
Oh yeah, I would definitely want to give myself advice. I think I would say, like, don't care what anybody thinks about you. Like, it really doesn't matter, especially at that age. Like, there's so few people in my life are the people that I went to middle school, high school with. Like, I can count maybe 2 people that are still involved, and mostly on social media because I don't live up there anymore.
Oh, right.
But it's life is about figuring out your unique space. And so I would love to tell that Steph that you will find that, and you will find the right person to be with, and you will find a career that makes you happy. Like, just let this stuff slide. It's not, yeah, it's not worth carrying that around. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, in school, we talking good grades, or what are we talking here?
Not really. I was like a solid C-ish student, depending on the subject. I really liked science. I hated math. Anything creative, I loved. So arts, photography, all that stuff I really excelled in. Traditional classroom training at the time that I was in school was very much very lecture based, and it wasn't very conversational. And I find I learn best when I can ask questions in the moment and be able to get a lot of like real world understanding of how this concept applies to something. So I just found it to be kind of boring, and I was very disengaged. I also, that's where I really learned how to procrastinate, when I was a kid, with school and schoolwork. And so I wish that is something that I'd never done, because it's followed me my whole life. I've gotten much better about it now as an adult, and being, doing this work for so long, I've figured out systems to make sure that I don't procrastinate. But, the back then it was, I remember, late nights, like scrambling to do a book report or something, some kind of project that I had weeks to do that I just didn't do. So not impressive.
I can definitely relate. I had, especially in school, I had this deadly combination of procrastination and delusions of grandeur, right? Like, so we would the teacher would say, hey, you have to come up with this project. Not only did I procrastinate, but mine would be so elaborate that it couldn't even be done anyway, right? So it's like, I was like setting myself up for failure. It was crazy.
Yeah. Learning that lesson of like, don't bite off more than you can chew. And like, sometimes like over-promising or under-promising and over-delivering is like,
the
sweet spot of life.
Iterative development was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've learned so much about the way that software is created that also relates to life, and how you should always be iterating and always be like looking for bugs in your life, and like, eliminating those. And life is code. I finally decided.
Code. I love that. I love that. You know what? And this brings me to a question I was actually going to ask at the end, but now I'm going to bring it up. You're a coder. You code. What's up with that?
I mean, not really. I would never consider myself a coder. I've coded a little, but I'm not a developer. I actually consider myself these days to be more of a product manager than a coder. I've been hiring product managers for about 7 months, and I am so attracted to the way that they work and the level of knowledge that they have about the software that they're building without having to be the person actually writing the code. I don't really have, I probably won't code again for the rest of my life. Like, it just was something that I wanted to learn and figure out, but it's not what brings me joy.
I think I know what it is. And I'm gonna put on my life coach hat on this one, right?
Oh.
I think that you are so empathy first. Whatever you are hiring for, you become.
Yeah, I think it's funny because a lot of people sort of assume that I was a software engineer or that I have been a product manager because I become a person who studies that craft. And I'm reading a really good book on product management right now, that it's even after 7 months of embedding myself in product teams on Slack and like listening to the way that they work and, filling, I don't know, almost 20 positions now within product management. I'm still learning and I'm still like refining the way that I understand. And so, I want candidates to feel like I really understand their role and I understand what it is that they do. And, even if I'm never going to actually practice that craft, I want to understand it to a level where a candidate thinks I do. So and I think that's what differentiates, interviewing with me and interviewing with some other recruiters who just have a job spec and never do that deep dive into like, what is this job really? And what does it take to be good at this? And it's not that hard. There's so many resources now that can really help you level up as a recruiter and have a depth of understanding. I mean, software engineering, simple development courses are all over the place. And there's so many out there for free. Product management books are cheap. So there's really no excuse for not like understanding the business that you're recruiting for and diving into that role. And rolling around in it, becoming like kind of immersed in the teams that you're hiring for. I mean, when we worked together, when I hired you, I was so integrated into the data team. It was, I felt,
you were part of the team.
Exactly. So, that's the ideal relationship for a recruiter. And it's really sad to me that most recruiters don't get to that stage.
Yeah. And I think what you're touching on is kind of like for a lot of people, even outside of tech, there's usually a gap between the position write-up and what the company's actually looking for or going to ask of you when you get there. Completely. And they usually have to navigate that gap themselves, right?
Right.
I think because you engross yourself in it with your approach, you're able to navigate that gap with them, right? You're able to jump in there and kind of be that guide to say, well, here's what you're really going to be doing. Here's what we're really asking of you. Where typically most people are just left on their own, man. Here's what you read online. Something different is going to be asked of you when you start, figure it out, right?
Yeah, and a lot of that too is like when you create a deep relationship with, say, your first hire in an organization, and then leverage that relationship to be like, okay, so tell me the real thing, like what's really going on in this department, and leverage those relationships to educate yourself and to then take that information forward to the next candidates that you hire. That's what really sets you up for success and sets up the people that you're hiring. I think if you're working for, as a recruiter, if you're working for an organization or a team that isn't willing to really see you as a partner and a consultant and somebody that should be in team meetings and, quarterly updates and all of those things, not necessarily presenting, but just listening, then you have more work to do. Because that's really what's going to differentiate you from other recruiters, either in your organization or the other recruiters that are trying to recruit the same talent that you are. So yeah, giving people a soft landing is so important. There's so many little things that you can do to really make a candidate feel special anytime from the time that they applied all the way to either when they're hired or rejected. Yeah. And those are the things that I think are the most fun. That's the stuff that really gets me lit up. So
I love it. Now, how did you make your entrance into HR recruiting?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. So I'd worked in retail management for a while and just was like really burned out on the customer service part of it. I remember telling my mom, like, this job would be great if it wasn't for the customers. And it was at that moment that I thought probably in the wrong job. And my parents had their own business selling chemical compounds to pharmaceutical companies for drug research. And we're literally like working out of their house and then eventually a really small office. And they were so disorganized. They asked if I could come like be their office manager, Girl Friday, I think that was my actual title. And so I did that for a couple of years and actually really liked it. I was really good at it. I was good at like, kind of looking for order and chaos and things. And fortunately for them, unfortunately for me, they retired and moved down here to South Carolina, where I live now. And so I remember I was packing up the office and there's a knock on the door, and this very nice woman, who I wish I could remember her name, came in, and she was from a staffing service and said like, oh, do you need any temporary help or permanent help, help hiring? And I was like, no, but I need a job. And so she sat down and we talked for about 30 minutes. And after the end of the conversation, she said, have you ever thought about being a recruiter? And I was like, no. But she shared the job description with me, and I went in for an interview and I got the job. I don't know what I said to fool these people that I had any idea what recruiting even was. And we're talking like these were the days of fax machines and no applicant tracking systems online. I don't think we even had a computer at first in the office. So I remember like that sound of a new resume coming over the fax machine. It was like, oh, such a good, like slicing a lot of people are going to be like, what's a fax machine? They would like slice the paper off and it'd be all rolled up and you'd have to like, yeah. And all of our candidates were on like 5x8 cards that they had like custom printed cards with like the name and all their skills and stuff. And so they'd be like in a box by discipline. So if you're administrative assistant or whatever, and then alphabetically. And so if your last name was Z, you probably never got called for a job back then. Where now it's like all in a database and we can search you. And so that kind of started me off on the world of recruiting. And I quickly moved from the agency side over to corporate recruiting because I really wanted to build relationships, and I didn't do it very well. I was never a very good recruiter early in my career. I completely admit that. I didn't have the best training and sort of fumbled through it. And then once I really started surrounding myself with people that love this craft and really, see it as a true career path, it started to dawn on me the impact that I could have on people. And that every application, every resume, that there's a person behind it. That's really easy to forget when you're working in systems all day and reading email on a screen. So that's why Zoom has been so game changing for me. Every candidate that I talk to on Zoom. And that's not the practice of most of the recruiters in my company, but it's slowly like filtering out. It's happening more and more because my close rates are really high and the relationships that I've been able to build, people are like, oh, I want to do that. And it's like, well, this is, one little piece that's a part of that. Right. So, I putting faces and names and backgrounds and pets and families like to that resume is such a great way to really make that person feel seen and heard while still doing my job and filling a position that the company is in need of. So it brings it all together.
That is great stuff. It's always so good to see someone who has found their calling, right? Like they are literally operating, they're hitting on all cylinders because it's what they're made to do, right? I think it shows with you. There's obviously a really big push these days, and I can't let you leave without talking about it because I think it's something that you do a great job with. A lot of companies are looking to try to hire with a priority on diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity. What advice or what words would you give companies who are looking to try to get better at hiring for diversity?
Yeah, I think it was one of my favorite stories around diversity. I think it was Stephen Colbert. Like he kept asking for writers of color and women, and they wouldn't. Every time they would bring him, people to basically audition for the role, they were white men. And he finally said, "We're not hiring any white men," which is probably illegal. I wouldn't advise this. But suddenly when he put the hammer down and said, no more white men, suddenly they found all these great women and people of color. And so, there's little things that you can do to lift up candidates that are of color. You can, be posting on sites that are focused around diversity, and maybe, as you're sourcing, looking for people that are from diverse backgrounds and things like that. But I think unless they're going to be treated in a way that allows them to show up as their full self, whether it's a person of color, LGBTQ, like all of the people that have typically been othered in an organization or life, then I think, you know, it's you're going to just have a revolving door, which frankly is worse than having no diversity at all in my mind, because you're not causing trauma. When you hire all white people, you're not causing anybody in the organization trauma. But when you hire diversity and then don't treat them well, they're walking out of your organization with trauma. And I literally wrote down yesterday, trauma, what was it? Trauma-based recruiting or something like that, where I want to be more thoughtful as I go into 2022 of the pain and trauma that people have from either past recruiting experiences, past job experiences. I've had them. I think everybody I know has had them, whether you're a person of color or not. And so I think, you know, really being incredibly sensitive to the fact that I don't know what it's like to be Jay. I don't know what it's like to be a Black woman in tech, like trying to succeed. I'll never know that, but I can ask and I can listen. And I remember last year, I think it was last year, my goal was to get more people of color in my network on LinkedIn. And so I spent a lot of time like tracking down people that were in recruiting first, and then who are they listening to? Who are they following?
We're being intentional.
Yeah, very intentional. In fact, I told them that, like, I want to have your voice in my network, not only for me, but for the, you know, I've got thousands and thousands of connections. And so if I can share something or elevate something that will really make someone think twice about microaggressions or, you know, just how they're treating other people at work. And especially as a white woman, I think it's my job, honestly, to, I remember I was in a training that was about the trauma that, I'm going to get emotional, the trauma that white women cause Black women in microaggressions, and just the way that they feel like they have to show up at work. They have to mirror the way that we act as white people. And that is just devastating. As someone who colors my hair and has tattoos and loves to show up as me, I'm an enthusiastic person. I'm a cheerleader. Like, I love all of that, like, energy that you can bring. And to think of someone, pulling that in and not bringing that to their work where they spend so much of their time. It was devastating to me to hear that. And I sat with it for a long time and didn't share it with anybody, because I needed to think through times when I may have done that to people. And I remember having some conversations with Black women that I worked with that I felt like I may have done things like this. Like, I want to talk about it with you. And like, you know, if I've ever made you feel like I didn't see you or care about your experiences, I want to apologize. And what an uplifting, like, raw moment for any human to say, like, I don't think I did this very well. Yeah. And I want to learn from it. And I'm hoping that you'll go on that journey with me. And it's been really amazing to, had women and men to my network that I wouldn't necessarily have, who wouldn't have sought me out necessarily. Mm-hmm. You know, they don't necessarily work in my industry. They don't, it's not people that I'm going to probably ever have a chance to recruit, but they've taught me so much. And so if you just sort of sit back and let your network languish, like people that just look like you, then you're missing out on a huge piece of what makes the world an amazing place. Yeah. So
yeah, I think that I have this phrase that I've done a lot of speeches on, where I talk about God painting in all of his colors, right? And God does paint a wonderful picture in every single one of his colors. And I believe that even in the issues that we face in this world today, the key is always to not ignore or act like we don't see any differences, right? The key is to see the beauty in the differences, right? Yeah. All of the colors that he paints. And I think, specifically, like, I've been in tech for 20 years as a Black man in tech. Specifically, I started in 1998. Back in those times, bring your whole self to work wasn't really a thing, right? So it was like, if you make it if you are lucky enough to make it, which I was, right? Like I was blessed enough to get a job in corporate America before I even graduated college, right? So I'm 21 years old, starting in corporate world, only Black guy there, right? It's like there is a pressure to be the corporate norm, right? Which is a white male. It doesn't have to be a person who's forcing you. It doesn't even have to be people giving microaggressions or saying things. It's already in the atmosphere.
Right.
Women feel it.
Oh yeah.
People of color feel it. Everyone feels it, that you have the norm is to be a white male. And if you are outside of the norm, then you probably should keep all of that stuff to yourself, right? The things you care about, the things you are thinking about, the way you want to dress or wear your hair. Yeah, right. Yeah. If you don't like golf, you probably shouldn't say that, right? Like all of those kind of things, right? Like,
and you know, as a woman living in the South, like I remember, you know, some of the things that I've heard come out of people's mouths, like just literally make my jaw drop. Or I remember walking into a meeting in an organization that was very white male dominated, and you know, we're going into this conference room and it was probably 50% men and women from, you know, different departments, and all the men sat at the conference room table and all the women sat along the edge, like not at the table. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, hell no. And I went up and I pulled, oh, there were chairs. I'm like, I'm sitting there. And I could hear people behind me kind of whispering, and I just ignored it. I'm like, I'm not gonna, you know, I'm here to participate. If I shouldn't be in this meeting, then let me have my time back. Yeah. But otherwise, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna participate on the same level as you are. Yeah. So yeah, just, you know, I'm so glad that we're at a point now at this inflection of really leaning into the hard conversations and opening, like, you know, pulling back the mask that all, you know, us white people have had of like, that's not my lived experience, so I don't have to worry about that. And it's like, I as I said earlier, like, you know, I so regret having grown up in a place that everybody looked like me. And, you know, the one Jewish family was like, oh, wow, that's so exotic, like, cool, you know, and like, now I look at it like, so dumb. Like, I wish I had, you know, just grown up in a place that had more diversity and had those experiences a lot younger. So I'm sort of forcing the people around me, you know, kind of pulling all of that into my experiences with great purpose, because it just makes me a better person and more empathetic to the struggles that people have had that I didn't even know about when I first started recruiting. So makes me a better person and recruiter, I think.
Yeah, so. I think so too. And it definitely shows in the work that you're doing. I can say that firsthand. I think that's all I got for you. That's all of the questions. You stood in there, you answered every one of them. I gotta say, you know, Steph, I really appreciate you showing up on my show. It's so great to see you again. You know, you are one of my favorite people. I'm sure everyone is enjoying the Steph experience, which has been a trademark term. If you've been hired by Stephanie McDonald, then you know what the Steph experience is. Yes.
Gosh, man.
Yeah, right. No, keep up the great work, Steph. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll all keep growing together.
Perfect. That's all I can ask for. Thank you so much for featuring me on your show. I'm very proud to be one of your first. So thanks you
for letting us know what brings you here.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. You guys take it easy. Thanks for joining us too. And join us again for more guests who will be telling us what brings them here.